Thank you, thank you. Welcome back. I see almost all of you, like after first session. It's happy to see you. And I see some friendly faces. I know half of you here. I think you are either my friends or either my previous colleagues. And actually, the started with Estonian weather, right? I had one joke. One colleague, a Turkish colleague, we worked together with him. He was joking always. You know, Bobur, like in Estonia, sun is not functioning well. And I asked why. Because it has a light, but it has no energy. But now today, it has energy, right? You can get some D vitamins. Actually, I had also longer hair when I relocated, I think 5 years, almost 6 years ago here in Tallinn. Now you see the result. Yeah, this is actually about myself. Today, as you can see, we're going to talk about some of the famous topics of nowadays, at least, ChatGPT and AI, and not well-known topic, API management. So let me introduce myself first for half of you who doesn't know me. My name is Bobur, or you can call me Tiger. Because Bobur, translation, like a tiger in English. And my surname, Umurzokov, means live more. And Bobur, live more. Bobur, or tiger who lives longer, like this. Right? I am a developer, advocate, and software engineer, as you can see, speaker. After the pandemic, last 1.5 years, I was traveling around the world. I presented at around 40 conferences in person and in 35 different countries, in Europe and United States, and 2 countries in Asia. So I hope this topic also will be interesting for you, since I am running it a couple of times. It's well advanced now. So you will be happy. First thing first, let me take one selfie, if you don't mind, because it is only my chance today to take this selfie, if you all agree, right? It is my Instagram account. It's for my Instagram account. I think this angle is good. More smiles, 1, 2, 3. One more time, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. So my job is done. Thank you, Kirill, Stas. Yeah, because I did my job already. But actually, I have a really cool, interesting topic, as I mentioned it, to give some knowledge. Because I'm in DevRel. DevRel means you should able to teach as you learn new things. If I'm learning, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in API. I'm not good at ChatGPT. But I can at least give you some knowledge. So at the end of the day, or at the end of this session, you can have some idea how to use OpenAI API and how you can leverage API management to enhance it, to make it more efficient, right? And by the way, who is using ChatGPT? Okay, almost everybody. If I correct my question, who is not using ChatGPT? Yeah, some people, okay, all right. Yeah. Applause, who is not using. Actually, I'm also using, while I'm writing my blog posts, it reduced my job up to 50%. Because I'm not writing exactly steps that explains technical stuff, right? In this step, you need to download Docker. In this step, you need to install Docker, right? In this step, I can ask ChatGPT, please generate for me 50% of my blog post, and then I can earn more money by writing content. Sometimes I write content. So here, another picture, bring your mind about APIs. Who doesn't know what is API? You. Are you joking or just?
Almost.
Almost, yeah. Okay, my question is to you. What does it mean API?
What does it do?
What does it mean API? It's acronym, right?
Yeah.
And
the last one is the interface.
Yes. P, application programming interface, right? Because APIs, it's quite famous nowadays because we are living in increasingly API-centric world, right? Every service we use today either uses a bunch of APIs or it is API itself. Even as you can see, ChatGPT uses also API to generate some AI models. If you have REST, you can call the REST, ask ChatGPT, please provide me some response, right? It can respond to you through the REST, some AI generated models, and so on. You can ask questions. Or recently, ChatGPT also announced new capabilities where you can create your own custom plugins. Who has already tried to create some custom? You, very good. Are you writing a custom plugin new or?
No, I just tried a few, but
existing ones?
yeah, existing ones, and I wasn't really happy with them so far.
Yeah, okay. You can explain me later, maybe after the session, why you're not happy. Because I'm also trying to write my own plugin that can work as, how to say, API gateway to forward some requests and ask some existing backend services to choose this backend service API intelligently. I mean, I don't have to write in YAML file all the description. AI can choose one of them, which backend service to serve these requests. So that's what I mean. ChatGPT plugins uses under the hood your API. It merges two capabilities, one AI and API. You can have API that exports some data, right? API, I mean, let's say booking.com. You can ask ChatGPT, please book me hotel and flight tomorrow at this time. And then it can connect to booking.com API. And plus, AI can decide like which day is preferable for you to fly or which hotel you prefer to stay, if it's close to your conference hall or not. Right? This is a combination. Good, good. And next thing is we say API is successful when we're building API or we have existing APIs by looking at three indicators, right? Maybe more indicators like my API should be performant enough, right? My API should be available on 100% of the time, and my API should be integratable. I can integrate into other APIs. I should integrate to third-party APIs, right? Or am I missing any other indicators here to build successful API?
Secure.
So yes, exactly. That's actually you are reading my mind. It was a secret. You already opened my secret. How to achieve this indicator security, availability, integrity, performance of your APIs? How we can achieve it?
How achieve security?
Yeah, security.
Not to use it all.
yeah, exactly. I asked it last time during another conference, like how to achieve these three indicators of success to build successful API. Someone asked, we need to write correct code, like workable code. And my answer was, you can also use API gateway to have these abilities. Like your API can be efficient, your API can be secure, you can enable authentication, and so on. Why? I will explain. Who doesn't know what's API gateway? Everybody knows API gateway. You are all smart. Yeah, I can explain a bit shortly in this case, if everybody knows what's API gateway. API gateway, as it says, just the gateway. It can be door, right? You open the door, closing the door to let someone get inside. In this case, in this picture, as you can see, there are multiple backend services. A backend service can be our microservice or serverless APIs, gRPC service, database, GraphQL, anything on the right side. Yeah? And API gateway stays in the middle to route all incoming requests to your intended destinations. I mean requests coming from your client applications. There's a web application, desktop application, mobile application, right? It receives first these requests and decides to which backend service this request can go. And in the middle, it can also use some rules and policies while forwarding this request to the responsible service. That's why it sits in the middle. So can you?
How API gateway is different from orchestration?
From what?
Orchestrator.
Orchestrate, good, thank you. Should I answer now or after?
You can answer now if you
Yes,
want.
I can answer now. Orchestrator, it's a separate service, right? You need to build orchestrator service to orchestrate responses, for example, from multiple backend services. What is bad with that? You need to know every service's data structure, what kind of response it should return, and if something changes on the backend service, you need to update orchestrator service as well, right? Because it's how to say wrapping responses coming from backend. But in API gateway case, you don't have to care about also technology or framework you are using in the backend. And the orchestrator, because we can use orchestrator, depends on you. Orchestrator service should be also, independent, right? You can write, for example, implement the orchestrator service in .NET or maybe in Java, while your backend service can be in .NET. And API gateway also doesn't care about your backend service, how it was built. Like you can build using any programming language, or any framework. If you replace your framework, your client doesn't affect. That's the case because API gateway directly talks to your client apps. You can maybe stop, replace, do canary release, you do A/B testing for your microservices and so on. This is what I really like, these features. On the top of that, it provides some plugins, extensions. Which means you can use these plugins and put these plugins to the API gateway to add extra functionality. We call it like cross-cutting functionality. What you can do, you can add authentication, like you don't have to write any code to have authentication for your web application or mobile application. API gateway use like 5 minutes. You will have authentication enabled. Or you can enable security, to some other observability, transformation, and so on. Is it clear what's the API gateway and plugin now? What's the plugin? Yes, more or less? Okay. Once it's clear, let's talk about my project. I am contributing to open source project. I'm not selling this project, by the way. I'm working on a couple of custom plugins, creating our own plugins to help the community to get the benefit of using these plugins. And this project called Apache APISIX API, and 6 just a number, right? And it is under Apache Software Foundation. Who knows Apache Software Foundation? Almost everybody, right? Who is contributing, maybe committing to Apache projects? Any project, like Kafka, Cassandra, Tomcat? No? Nobody contributing? Okay, don't worry. But you are using Kafka, right? Okay, you are Kafka using. Okay, good. Because APISIX was one of the projects that's young, growing fast, and have some user-friendly community. It has some cool features you can try if you find interesting. Because I'm explaining now why I like this project, because it doesn't depend on the language or the background we have. For example, if I decide to create my own plugin, I can use my own skills. Like I'm a Java developer, I can create my own plugin to add extra business capabilities. Or if you're a Python developer, you can write your own plugin. But if you are lazy enough, you don't want to write any code, you can use a dashboard. Let me play this. Dashboard is actually good with a low-code feature. You can just drag and drop existing plugins to create your own plugin by composing multiple plugins together, by merging, right? It gives capabilities like, how to say, input of one plugin can be output to the another plugin, like this. You can do orchestration also here. As Kirill said, this is also sort of orchestration. I don't know why it's stopping. I think it's Microsoft Teams. Like as you can see, like I can put two plugins or multiple plugins together to build my own plugin. So clear, right? APISIX, okay, custom plugin development and dashboard. So good. In this case, we can jump back to AI topic now. We understood API gateway, and next one is OpenAI API. So ChatGPT, everybody is using. Who is using OpenAI API? Kirill, I know you also using. You guys using. I will ask maybe after this session why and what are the use cases you're using. And everybody knows what's the OpenAI API, right? Or I can explain. It's the same as ChatGPT, but programmatically you can access ChatGPT without dashboard like asking. You can ask the same with API. And that's why it's called OpenAI. Also it makes available some of the features of ChatGPT. You can use features like text completion. Like you can ask, please explain me what is Apple Pro. It can explain. It can tell you a story when it's established and so on. Or you can complete the code for you. This feature is actually used by some companies I found for testing, for integration tests. Because sometimes if you're a tester, you need to create a bunch of input files, right? Inputs to test first load, high load, or test the benchmark, so on. This AI can generate some input for your tests. This is actually proven, or there are some libraries, ChatGPT is used in these projects, even in enterprise projects. And one of the cool features also image generation. You can ask ChatGPT, please, this is a text, you describe what you want to draw, and then ChatGPT can draw some pictures for you. And maybe REST API can respond to your request with image. Or you can send the image, ask, please give me variations of this image, different type of image. It can return the same image in a response, right? Clear? 3 features. You can find more features on the website. And now, okay, AI is clear, API gateway is clear. How we can put these 2 cool tools together to get some benefit? Because API gateway staying in the middle, right? It can give us security, first of all. ChatGPT, it has a security feature also. For example, you can access ChatGPT or OpenAI API only using API key, by API key. But you can add also with APISIX or any API gateway solution, or maybe API management from AWS or Microsoft Azure. You can also use these API managements or gateways can provide you different type of security features, like certificate-based, SSO, identity provider, all right? Because when we're talking about security, we have authorization also, authentication. So all the features out of the box. You don't have to worry about when you're using ChatGPT plus APISIX or plus API gateway. Or performance, another cool feature, because if you're using AI, it's not for free. I am paying also $5 for 2 months only for you to show this demo. That's why I use sometimes to cache AI-generated models using API gateway, because I don't have to ask all the time the same question. If I'm asking the same question, I can receive it from the cache. It doesn't mean that you can replace fully and use API gateway as a cache, because the cache is different story, right? But you can at least improve your performance by using cache feature of API gateway. So this is about an observability. The last one, I will skip the scale. It's clear because everybody is smart. Observability means you can enable also logging, tracing, and metrics. If you're using Grafana, who is using Grafana? Oh, you see so many people. And Prometheus, Datadog. Also, yeah. This Datadog, Prometheus, Grafana, you don't have to, let's say, configure from scratch using API management solutions. Now they are quite modern. You can just enable the plugin, it starts collect everything automatically, and it makes available to Prometheus and the Grafana dashboard visually. These are cool features. I hope it's something new for you, right? Or have you heard also these features that API Gateway provides in the past? No? Yeah, if it's no, it's interesting. Great, and also you can use rate limiting. Let's say I am building startup new project. I want to build one application. In my next slide also you will see here. I want to build a new application. It can be mobile application, let's say. Maybe I can make a web application also. It has only one form, let's say one input field and one button, submit. I can ask everything on this mobile application. Like I can ask, I want to prepare something for the evening dinner. Can you propose me something, like any ingredients? AI can respond to you, right? And in your phone you can see it. This is what we are going to build now during our session. I have one endpoint called Ask Me Anything, and I have OpenAI API, right? OpenAI API has different endpoints, like one completion endpoint, one text generation chat endpoint. I'm going to use /v1/completions endpoint. It's existing one. You can also try. And I am going to put also in the middle API gateway. You can ask now again, why? Because I am putting it to manage my API consumers. Let's say now I'm using it alone because I'm developing, right? What if someone else wants to use my startup project, my tiny, small, simple mobile application? I can create API consumers using API management, right? I can create one consumer, multiple consumers. Also, I can share my single API key between this here. Yes, that OpenAI API gives me with multiple people. Also, by giving more API consumers, of course, authentication. I already mentioned it, right? And rate limiting also. I can say, okay, you can use my mobile application only to send the requests for free. Maybe 100 times. If you send more than 100 requests, you need to pay. Right? This is also rate limiting feature that can offer, and also caching. We already mentioned it. API observability. Clear this diagram, architectural diagram. Any questions? No. So what's happening? If what's happening is clear, we can jump to demo session. So you can see I have also a website version of my how to say the application. Actually, it's not a real application. You cannot find it on the internet. But anyway, so if not questions here at the demo, if you want to follow, you can scan. It will bring you to GitHub repository. You can try not now because this is not a workshop, right? This is just you can listen and learn, take new ideas, and you can give a try. I'm not again like promoting one API gateway API management. You can use, for example, this one of our sponsors, Microsoft's Azure API management, also offers the same. One cool thing I found also in this API management, or when you use API gateway, if I decide to use for my startup project OpenAI API, what if I want to use in the future Azure or maybe Google AI provider? I can anytime replace. It doesn't affect again my user, right? So good. If everything is clear or not clear, we can jump into demo. Let's see. Now everybody can see. Now my last question: do you prefer to me like write curl commands or using dashboard?
Right.
Curl commands, like when you send a request to some API, use curl, right? Or Postman. Who prefers dashboard? Who prefers curl? Postman. Okay. I prefer curl. Sorry. I'm not lazy. It's not lazy even. Like if you want to integrate your APIs, you don't use Postman, right? In reality, you write Java code or Go or Python code. I will show you also how to do it with Postman and maybe dashboard also without writing any code. Great. If you open this GitHub repository, I have this project called APISIX OpenAI API, right? And it has some already structured written code. You can run this project with Docker. If you have a Docker installed, in my case, because I worked at Microsoft, I'm using still Windows. And I have Docker desktop installed on my machine, as you can see. Who is using Docker desktop, by the way? Yeah, so many people, you see. Yeah, I'm also still using. I have two containers that are running, as you can see. One is etcd, another is APISIX. It is for, they are both for APISIX project, because one is APISIX itself without storage. etcd acts as a storage. Like for the same for Kubernetes, it uses etcd storage, right? You can use even without storage. It's also possible. Because we need to keep some configuration files for the future, so I'm going to use etcd. Clear? Now let's start with, you can of course start this project the same like me, because I prepared already in advance. You can run this quick start script. Assume that I have already run this, and then I will jump to next step. Before jumping, let me quickly show you this OpenAI API, because some people are already looking at me, what is the OpenAI API? This is OpenAI API. You can go to this website, right? And you can see like it has a lot of features. You can build your own plugin and so on. And I have also my account created. And also you can see some documentations. I will leave you to have a look. For example, there's also API references where you can check how to authenticate to OpenAI API, how to call a completion endpoint, right? For example, to call completion endpoint, you can run this curl command, or if you are Python professional or Node.js or JavaScript, you can use other examples. Straightforward, right? Using OpenAI API. Technically, if you are not developer, clear to using OpenAI API or not? Okay.
Actually, I have a question. I tried to use it myself, and for me it was a bit difficult to find those different models.
Yeah.
Use ChatGPT-4 model, right?
Yeah.
Can we also use ChatGPT-4 model with browsing mode?
Browsing mode,
Yeah.
yes, ChatGPT-4 also you can use. I preparing a demo with 3.5.
Okay.
You will see 3.5. It is actually you send some request to the endpoints. This is API, and you can ask something. Let me show you. As you can see, I have this sample command. The same, I'm sending the same to /completions endpoint, one request. And I am using my API key to access OpenAI API. Otherwise, I cannot access securely, right? Don't take a picture. I am paying. It happened already with me, 2 times. After my session, I forgot to renew or revoke my key. And somebody already used my 10 USD dollars. I don't want to pay for this. So this is why I'm using this API key to access securely. As you can see in authorization header, I have this key. And also I am using, you can specify the model, which model you want to use. In the documentation, you can find more information. There are a lot of models, AI models. You don't have to know all of them. You can just use the default. If you are not like a machine learning or AI engineer, you don't have to care. And first important thing is prompt. In the prompt session, you can ask anything. Like I'm asking, for example, what's the DEVCLUB in Estonia? Right? This is my question to ChatGPT. And here you can specify also temperature and maximum tokens. Maximum tokens, how many characters you are expecting from AI to respond you. You can, if you don't specify, it can respond like a book. It can write you one book for you. Right? To limit my usage of my API, not to pay more, I am specifying 256 characters, and temperature means how much, let's say, tokens to use for this
Temperature means different thing. How creative it should be. 0 means it's a exact response up to 2 meters.
There is also 1. That's why I'm saying. Yeah, this user assistant or the itself robot system is necessary. Yes, thank you, Kirill. Yeah, now it's clear right here, these objects. Prompt, model, maximum tokens, and let's try. Try to send this Coral command, or someone preferred Postman. You can do also the same Postman. But it takes time to convert some Postman. Now I can maybe jump into my terminal and send this request directly from my terminal. I'm using Ubuntu, by the way. Let me close this. Because Windows, I don't like. Yeah. If you press enter by running command, it takes some time because AI should generate something, and also depending on internet connection. I got my response. You see, some response coming from my AI, as you can see here. Can you read? What's the DEVCLUB? It's a non-profit organization in Estonia. Am I right, Kirill or Stas? Stas is not here. Right. So everything starts from this idea. You can start to build your own application. Now, okay, I can access my OpenAI API, and let's introduce now step by step, like 3 steps. We will introduce API gateway to add some features: security, authentication, blah blah, consumers, right? Monetization, receiving money from my users, so on. There are 3 steps to use API gateway. Once you install it, you need to create upstream and route and plugin. That's all. And with these 3 steps, you can have API gateway features on your hand. First step is I will create upstream. Also, not by sending request to OpenAI API, but by sending request to APISIX admin panel. I can send some commands. Now, in this example, what I am saying, please APISIX create now new backend service or register existing backend service. My backend service will be API OpenAI.com, right? And please request. Yeah. In orchestration, yes, you need to change orchestration service structure. Your question?
Maybe a comment here, because if you read the answer that you got actually from OpenAI, I think if you dig into it, this is, I would say, even false information. Not just like almost the truth, but like completely false. And if that is temperature 0, which is like should be the correct answer without any creativity, then I mean, all of you who raised your hands when you're using the OpenAI, just bear in mind, this is a very good example of a very simple question, which has a simple, which Google is most likely much better in answering correctly. But this is like the craziest. Where does it get this information?
Yeah, it is because the data is old. Maybe DEVCLUB exists before even ChatGPT, right? But this data is from which year is in ChatGPT 20?
It really doesn't matter. I mean, DEVCLUB is more than 10 years old.
Yeah, 10 years old, but ChatGPT, it's still training, right? There is still kid. It should grow up. When it grow up, it can answer more complicated questions like this, maybe.
But if you ask someone and they don't know the answer, then the honest answer is, I don't know. But it's not that you...
Yeah, correct. This is actually cannot act as like a human being, right? I mean, if we start this discussion, just a moment, if we discuss this discussion, it's about, I'm not pushing the people or ChatGPT creator, not pushing to you use only ChatGPT, right? So you can still use Google. Like for your positive or for your some use cases, you can choose ChatGPT. Like for example, if you have input data and you want to create some statistics based on the input data, or if you want to write some SQL queries, in such cases it's really helpful. If I want to find a bug in my code, I'm not publicly sending this request if assume that ChatGPT installed in my server.
But how do you know that SQL that you get from that is correct?
It's correct. I mean,
if this is incorrect.
No. This is actually It's actually ChatGPT words when you open the website. There are some informations can be not incorrect if it's related to some individual data. Let's say it's about company, or ChatGPT doesn't know about me, for example. Now, if you ask, this is my answer to your question. Like, let's say DEVCLUB also some unique name, right, or organization name. Maybe we can ask Microsoft also. Maybe it doesn't know what's Microsoft, but it does know some coding or not related, not common things.
To answer your question, there is OpenAI Flow released a couple of weeks ago, which is basically the same approach. When you say, this is my inputs, these are my outputs I expect, and it checks that models provide output you expect as well. So there is a validation flow to OpenAI. You can embed it into your CI/CD nowadays as well.
So you first write the prompts to OpenAI, you get the code, and then you write the test to verify that code is correct. But what's the wrong with writing the code?
It's not the search result. It's ChatGPT cannot Google internet. It's generated by model.
It did a lot of Googling basically in the beginning. So it grabbed all that information, and based on that information, it got that answer. So let's say, still my point is, if you cannot trust in answering such a simple question, how can you trust it answering what is the correct SQL to select some complex data from a complex database? No,
it's I agree with you. I agree with you. Don't trust. Don't trust. I'm not like a seller person of ChatGPT, right? I'm not working for Microsoft anymore. Don't worry. I am your friend. I'm your friend. So
this was just a very good example.
It's a very good example, but I don't know if you are using SQL. For me, in my case, if you believe me, I'm a developer. In 95% of time, when I start to ask something about SQL, my SQL response was correct from ChatGPT. or someone can prove my words. Like when you ask about one small tiny bug in Java code also, it can find your tiny bug. This is actually also a helpful feature, right? Yeah, there are some improvements, right? I agree, but it comes with time.
You can search the news about how ChatGPT generates cases which never exist, and proved the advocate or who asked that this is true. I swear it's true. But
That's it.
That
Yeah.
picture was the two. But let's move on because we have 10 minutes.
Yeah, we have question.
Yeah, I just want to comment about this topic. The temperature is about variety of the reply, right? So the information which we see here is not Google. So if you want a specific information, you can go to Google like you did before and be happy with it. ChatGPT actually makes the result every time word by word. I think it's the basics of the ChatGPT, how it works. So basically, this reply is not what it got as a right information. It is a creative tool. And if you put a 0, it doesn't mean it will give you a true. It will be 0 creative, but it will be still creative. If you put it 10, it will be creative every time you ask this prompt again. So it's not about true or false information. It's about understanding what this ChatGPT tool stands behind. And it stands behind the creative tool, which every time gives you a response of different words. So you just have to see how it works, word by word, how it collects the data together. So it cannot be true, and anything in ChatGPT cannot be true. It's getting better in this. But it is the best tool I have seen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your support. I think this side my team, this side your team. No, just joking. No, actually he's right. Let's say at the beginning also when I asked what's API 6, it couldn't answer correctly to my questions. But when I corrected this ChatGPT, I said it's not correct. Please make it more correct answer, and next time it answered correctly to me. Maybe we can improve DEVCLUB information, Kirill. Teach ChatGPT what's DEVCLUB.
GPT-4 is much more precise.
Yes. I think I was not using this here ChatGPT 4, this AI API using 3 or 3.5 still.
It's DaVinci. It's not
Yeah, exactly. That's example is old. So I need to maybe improve using ChatGPT 4. I have turbo user.
Turbo is 3.5 still.
Yeah, okay, good. So the main point is now we have API gateway and intelligent ChatGPT. We can build some cross-cutting concerns, right? Cross-cutting concern means there are repeatable the features for every app. For every app, you need to have a security. For every app, you need to have observability. For every app, you need to have CI/CD tools, right? In these scenarios, you can use API gateway or API management. This is actually the takeaway from my presentation from the beginning. Description when you give as input model or product name and ask questions, it can answer by going first to API gateway, and then API gateway brings the response. Mobile application that was presenting this. Let's ask, what's the Apple Pro 13? And you will check if the answer is correct. No? I'm searching for investors. From my start, I didn't understand. Yeah. If you find it interesting, yeah, please maybe reach out to me or.
Do you accept beers?
Yes, I can. Yeah. And I think in September I registered also for DigiDev. This is actually not more kind of exciting topic of ChatGPT, but I will have another interesting discussion about how you can create your custom plugin with ChatGPT in September in Tartu at the DigiDev conference. I'm inviting all of you. I don't think it's for free, but you can come and join my talk. Takeaways from this discussion, again, I am not an expert of AI, not expert of APIs. The idea was how you can use API management to control your traffic, to manage your traffic coming to API, because ChatGPT doesn't offer fully security features or the traffic control features. For example, we learned the API gateway basics, right? We created the route, upstream, plugin. And then we can install other plugins like proxy caching to cache response, or maybe to enable some JWT token-based authentication. You can also enable authentication, or you can create maybe some API consumers from a single entry point. This is a takeaway for you. So now we can have still time, questions. You asked already. Maybe you go. I don't know.
Difference
Just a moment.
between API 6 and API 7.
Ah, okay. You found my secret also. API 6 open source project that I am working as a developer advocate. Actually, API 6 has an enterprise version also. API 7, we are not directly promoting it. But API 7 also works similarly like in the cloud. You can also install it on premises to have more advanced features. Like you can scale your application and so on. But the API 6 is for free. This is the only difference. And API 7 is paying for me, not API 6. Clear? Go ahead.
Yeah, so API 6 reminds me of tools that used to be called, some of them were called middleware and some of them
Yes.
were other names.
Reverse proxy.
Yeah, was still the same, very similar, let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
The problem with the commercial offerings that I have seen over the many years is that you had either a fancy UI app which you could use to configure it, or maybe some proprietary XML or JSON-based file to configure it. And the problem was, if you had this UI, then it was very hard to actually deploy that to different environments.
Agree.
And if you had some proprietary XML, then that meant that you said you don't need to deal with whatever the backend is written, whether it would be JavaScript, .NET, or Java, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you would have yet another language which you need to learn in order to build it, which is proprietary to this provider.
Yes.
So at least the very short thing I saw here is that the only way to configure this is either to drag things on the screen or call curl or whatever, make HTTP calls basically to the server.
Yeah.
What I envision, let's take a big enterprise. We are in Eesti Energia right now. They have multiple backend apps. They want to build a beautiful API using many different, exposing many different functionalities in one API. So that would mean like 100 curl calls or something like that. Is that how you would configure that API, the gateway for that, or is that
you got the point. I think you are the most advanced use case of API gateway. You already explained it. It means you don't have to repeat the same unique features or common features for every service and put these features into one place. This is the API gateway.
Yeah, but how do you configure this? How do you build it? I mean, if I need to write the same thing in Java, let's say, I can write my code and I can version it, I can deploy that, I can build it that. But
Here, no. Yeah, got it. I understood. Here, curl commands, why I showed you, just because it explains step by step, right? Plugin, route. In this case, you can use the same Kubernetes approach, declarative approach. You can specify once in the YAML file. What do you specify there? Inside the YAML file, you specify how many backend services you have, and what are the endpoints exposing these backend services. Like A, microservice exposing ABC endpoint, and B, ABCD, so on. You are not writing in YAML file, not in Java or any other.
Okay, so instead of XML and JSON, no,
Yep.
we have YAML.
You can use JSON also if you prefer JSON, yeah. But what do you prefer? You prefer ChatGPT to write some YAML file? So
It's yet another language, basically, that you're inventing, basically, to define this.
No, you don't have to learn language, because if you're using YAML, JSONs, it's already...
The idea that you have, what was this, roots, plugins, endpoints, or what you have, this is a language.
Yeah, come on.
This is domain-specific language.
Yeah, exactly.
You see, that's a trade-off you make, right? So on a simple use cases, that doesn't pay off. Absolutely, I'm with you. But if you need to create different security of these throttling feeds for every service, and you do all over and over again in every service, then that's a different story in this case, right? Because APISIX already provides you out of the box. Say, for all these layers, I cover with this thing, and they take care of this one. You don't embed it on a code level for every service. So you need to understand how complex API and API management is in order to decide if you want to have centralized or you want it to implement it by your hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
or implement orchestrator service, right? Clear.
Yeah.
This APISIX is pretty similar to iPaaS solution.
Yes.
The most valuable feature of iPaaS is to have some mapping to map one response to another.
Yes.
Is there any such feature in APISIX?
Chaining API requests, yes.
But can you like map from one field to another?
Yeah, exactly. That's a cool question. I recently also wrote one blog post about how you can handle sequence of API calls and chain some requests. For example, let's say you do one API and you do filter, right? And in the next call, you pass to the next API. The next API can do transformation. And then next call can do something else, aggregation in the pipeline. You can achieve that also.
Can it also kind of fetch the schema of these nodes upstreams to like based on the schema
Yep.
and map, like make the connection? Can it fetch the schemas?
What do you mean? Export schemas or?
Like for example,
Swagger.
Huh?
yeah, for example,
Swagger, for example.
Yeah, okay. This is also, it's also possible to export some schemas. Like, let's say you have specified some configuration, right? Routes, upstream.
yeah, for example, some service
Yeah.
has fixed schema of response.
Yeah, this is actually, you can specify the same with OpenAPI the definition. We support OpenAPI definition. That says you have millions of already existing APIs. You have OpenAPI definition or Swagger, whatever. You can just upload to the API management or API gateway. It can automatically generate routes and all the configurations.
Then what is the difference between iPaaS and APISIX?
I don't know, like you're asking like a quite specific the product, because there are tons of them. The main idea of today's session, like as I said earlier, I'm not showing like the best cases of APISIX. As example of APISIX, I was describing how you can use API gateway. That's my talk. Yeah, maybe I will figure out, search out like how the difference. Last question.
What is the simplest way or scenario to screw up OpenAI API? I can explain why I'm asking, but that's always the question.
Yeah, screw up. What do you mean by? What do you mean by screw
I
up?
mean, to write some request, it will just fail. Easily.
Sure. Do you want to break OpenAI API?
Okay, explain. Just to understand things, sometimes we break things to understand how
Yeah,
we do. So
yeah.
what is the simplest way to break this OpenAI API?
Sensitive topic. That's it.
Yeah, actually, when you ask sensitive topic, yeah, it does answer, but it says I am.
It's happened so many times, but what's from your practice?
I am not a hacker. I am not a hacker.
Let's focus on the topic, right? So the topic is APISIX, just in case.
Do you have NuGet package?
NuGet package.
For C# developers?
No. No. I think you understood like this. Some of you understood like this. APISIX or whatever Kong, maybe there's a Kong API gateway provider. For them, you don't have to have a specific SDK. They don't have a SDK. You know, it's a different, separate instance of your service. There is no kind of the logic you need to write with your Java. Like you can specify everything with JSON or YAML, your APIs, endpoints, get or post. That's all. Like I need to understand why you need NuGet package here.
So if I want verbose log, so I have to create plugin.
There is already a plugin in there.
Yeah, if I want to configure, I want verbose log everything into file.
On the application logs, right? Not API logs.
API logs.
Yeah, if it's API logs, API gateway already fetches all these requests and it logs automatically your logs. In this case, you don't need.
This.
Yeah, that's it. To configure this.
Yeah,
There is.
you configure APISIX, but you don't configure your application. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's why you don't need NuGet package. It's a higher level. You just configure, let's say, HTTP logger, and you specify which server you want to send this file, and then it can send a generated file to your server and save it. It means you don't have to change any code in your .NET application. It means, for sure, you don't need NuGet package. Does it explain, or
So,
more or less?
in my project, I have only mapping. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Only mapping. Okay. Yeah. Good. So,
I think we're good to go for today.
any other? Nope.
Now, all other questions, the people will kind of lock you in the corner and ask. I would like to leave building by
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you all for
It's
coming.
time.
Thank you, Bobur, for presenting.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Kirill.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes, DevClub socks. You don't have any, right?
Yeah,
So,
I don't have. Thank you.
With that, we